Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Since it's been so cold up here in Minnesota, figured this is a good opportunity to talk about portable jump starters if you have not used one before or if you have not purchased one before. I want to talk about some of the differences that I've personally seen when it comes to a more expensive name brand like a Morphe, like you see here, versus just your, Amazon special. The biggest differences you'll notice right away between the two is this larger brick on the cables itself, and that is actually the kind of safety mechanism, the relay that actually allows this high amperage to pass through these cables. The Morphe's a little bit more intelligent, so it'll detect if it's got a stable enough connection, and then it will burst the power out through some internal safety pieces, versus this will have its relay kind of clicking here. And we will see that here in a moment. So we're actually going to take this and use it to jumpstart our 99 Acura here. This isn't totally dead. We will show our keys here. It'll be probably pretty hard to see in the sunlight, but she is blinking very, very dimly. So we're going to go ahead and give her a jump start. And as we do this, we're going to also then move the vehicle inside the shop to trickle charge the battery back up to 100%. So in this case, we can see already a little bit of battery corrosion, more than likely being a culprit for some of our discharge. So I'm going to get a multimeter and show you guys the current battery voltage, and then you can kind of visualize what happens when we burst it with a jump starter here. Okay, and we'll just take a basic meter here, and we're going to go ahead and check current battery voltage, which will probably be pretty weak as expected. Yes, so about 9.5 volts. So she's definitely quite weak as it is. What I like to do is set up our cabling first. So we will go ahead and do our positive and then our negative here. These are going to have two different style connectors, one with a flat edge and one perfect circle, so you cannot make a mistake and flip them. So the way that these systems work is that they will pulse the ability to jumpstart. So they're not always going to be outputting, typically, if they're safe enough, they're not always going to be outputting all the current that they can, but they will turn it on for a couple seconds, allow you to attempt to start the vehicle, and then turn it back off so that it doesn't keep pushing all of its juice out unnecessarily and dangerously. So I'll be quiet here for a second, and you will hear the relay click as I plug it in, and you will see the battery voltage jump when it gets that extra juice for the jump start. There's our click, and there's our extra power. We're going to see that it's going to stop here in a second, so we're pushed up to around 14 volts around charging, and we're back down, and it's going to click again. So we're going to go ahead, turn the ignition on with the remote start, see if she'll start. Perfect. And then what I like to do is disconnect the unit from the cables themselves so that we take away its ability to output any power. We are going to unplug these cables. We see that we are charging, and we're going to bring this into the shop and put it on a trickle charger to ensure that the battery voltage comes up nice and slowly so that we actually restore the battery's health now that we've jump started it. Okay, so now that we have the vehicle running, there's a couple different things. Traditionally, when you kind of envision a situation like this, you're obviously going to be, in the morning on the way to work, need a jump start, or if you're leaving the office, or if you're somewhere that you need to drive immediately. Typically, that's a good policy to jump start and then immediately drive the vehicle, ideally for, a decent amount of time. Not just a quick, minute down the road, shut it off. You'll more than likely have to jump it again. However, best practice for battery health after a jump start is to allow it to trickle charge back up to near or 100%. So in this case, we are going to take the vehicle and move it into the shop and allow it to trickle charge back up to at or near 100%. And that way, the 9.5 volts that we saw will actually bring it back up to a better resting voltage and make sure that it can maintain that 12.6 or around there. Plus, having it out of the cold will always be a little bit nice for the battery's health as well. So again, we have it in the shop now, although if we go to shut the vehicle off and go to restart it, it may not restart. This battery health might be still okay, and it is. A little 4-cylinder isn't much of a load on the cold cranking amps for the battery, so kind of surprised that it was able to jumpstart just off of a burst of voltage. But the big thing to keep in mind is that even though we pumped enough power into the battery to start it, it still needs to be topped off either through a drive, typically, with enough time to charge it, or best case on a trickle charger so that it can kind of charge low and slow back up to good health. So we're going to go ahead and shut this off and put it on a trickle charger. So we'll get our hood open back up again. So that battery corrosion is something that we will take care of as well. Go ahead and get a extension cord. And in this case, we're just going to use kind of a cheaper intelligent charger that's going to have a little readout so we can see kind of what's going on. In this case, we are an ordinary battery, not lithium. We're going to let it automatically trickle so that it can kind of control and ramp up and down its amperage. So it's not just nuking the battery, but it's, again, low and slow charging. So in this case, we can actually connect it first and we should see a readout. So we'll go ahead and attach it to our battery. Interestingly enough, we're sitting at about 12.5. Go ahead and get this plugged in. So now we've got our charger plugged in. We're going to see that we're pushing around 8 to 10 amps immediately. That is to be expected. That will go down as time goes on and the battery reaches a full charge, around 14 volts, which is perfect. And that'll hopefully nurse this battery back to good health after being in the cold for a little bit and sitting for a while. So what we saw in the video today is an Amazon special jump starter that was able to do the job just fine for us. You can see that we took about 1/3 of its charge in order to jump this little 2.3 4-cylinder. So this definitely does not have a giant capacity, but in these situations, you know, 1 start is typically enough, maybe enough for 2 if you're going to go somewhere short and need to start it again. It is good to get a unit that, you know, can start multiple times simultaneously on a single charge. And I will show you what happens when you have a cheaper unit like this one, what happens when you stress test these units and ask too much of them too quickly back to back. Again, a lot of these have safety features built in typically to the cables on the cheaper units or the Morphe unit that has it internally built in. But here's an example of a unit, another kind of cheaper option that I had used for quite some time. And if you're familiar with anything lithium ion battery wise, like cell phones or laptops, over time when the battery health degrades, you'll start to see them bloat and swell. In this case, I had quite a few back-to-back starts, actually on a riding lawnmower, so it wasn't a giant load, but it was enough to basically generate too much heat in the battery itself, and the plastic shell actually split apart, and you'll see that the battery itself started to swell and grow. So in this case, in my opinion, for how much amperage you are asking out of these little units, this one is no longer what I would consider safe. This lithium ion battery is one that you really need to dispose of safely, because any kind of puncture to it I believe it's just oxygen. Once it's exposed internally, it'll basically, ignite like you see in some electric car fires, and it's really hard to snuff out. So you don't just want to throw this in the general trash. This is going to be a recycling piece, but just be mindful that on some of these cheaper units that don't have things like overload protection or thermal protection, that if it starts to swell and crack the case, you really should not keep this as your backup anymore. This is essentially now going to be retired as e-waste, and I will not be using this unit just for the simple fact that we do not want this battery to swell anymore and create any higher risk of explosion, thermal detonation, you name it. All right, now that we've got the vehicle in the shop on a trickle charger, getting nursed back to health, that is essentially the end of this process, where we need to do a basic jump start with a portable jump starter. Hopefully that gives you an idea of using kind of a cheaper one, some of the limitations again being on the capacity side and the safety side. However, if you're mindful enough that a cheaper unit may have some limitations, they really do get the job done. And it's nice to have a couple of them for different vehicles, or one that's constantly charged if another one's being used and you don't want to use it over and over again to cause it to overheat. It is nice to have a couple on hand just in case you have a vehicle that's a little bit more dead or a higher displacement engine that requires more power to turn over when it's stone cold. So if you learned something new here today or just enjoyed the content in general, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Let me know down below if you've had any positive or negative experiences with portable jump starters, more expensive versus less. They come in a variety of shapes and sizes, from the smaller kind of pocket size, like almost like a longer wallet, or they come in more handheld briefcase size that you would have maybe a tire inflator, a jump starter, portable power pack style. And with that, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.